It's for sale, I guess it's vacant. That was new at one time. A familiar house that has gone in a strange history. The Whittington family ended up there and had a fire in it after they moved. But of course, the family did. It stood for a long time, then has a new home built there. At one time, that was the edge of the city limits of West Liberty, when the town was growing out and expanding. And it was part of, in those days, a lot of those homes, in fact, it was 2 or 3 on Calhoun Street, had an 80-acre farm turned behind it. And the Whittingtons took that ground and turned it into a housing project. Oh, if you've been here a long time, remember Ray Wiesenberg, and his company is still called Wiesenberg Agency. He started here back in the 30s. I had a partner, and in an interesting story, I can't tell you the name of his partner, but one night he went off with a cash register, took all the money, which in those days, several $100s. And Ray had just been in business here for a couple of months. But the kind of guy, he went to all those policyholders and said, I'm going to cover your policy out of my own pocket. And he did that. And of course, he was an institution for years with that reputation. And that building's still standing. This is the old depot just before it started its transition. And I took the photo because it looked so bad. Can't imagine it's going to be staged, but of course it was. The second depot, the first one was Woodman, burned down. Oh, who's the architect here? I think in 1903 or 4, this building was built. Yeah, that's where I was born. But you can imagine 30 trains coming in there every day. I lived down on 3rd Street by the coal chutes. And for probably the first 5 years of my life, the coal chutes woke me up every morning. Because that coal would come crashing down. Everything was cold at that time before the diesels come in. And West Liberty was a hub. It's the end of the 2-track line from Chicago. And it's split off, one going to Iowa City, one north and one south. Another city dignitary. He ran for mayor once but didn't make it. He got 2 write-ins. Harry Rockwell. And he was the superintendent down to jail for quite a while. He would monitor people bringing in trash that shouldn't bring it. But he never got out of his chair. A very historic barn down on, that's Corn Street, I think. Corn of Corn and Highway 6. That belonged to the Whittaker family, which lived across the street. And it was a busy, nice building in the 20s, 30s, 40s. In fact, Priscilla's father ran a home buying cattle buying operation back in the 60s, 50s, 60s. And it's gone, of course. One more thought. The building across the street belonged to the Hazlets. They were related brothers and sisters. Burned down probably in the late 40s. A huge fire. In the summertime, you had to be careful when they made hay. It was loose hay or baled hay. If it was too cold, it would catch on fire in the barn. And that's exactly what happened. Martindale Hayes was a big barn, just as big as that one. Burned down middle of July. They were part of our cabin enterprise down in Cedar River, and I was down with my folks. In fact, Martha come out the door. Didn't have phones at that time, cell phones. The highway patrol had to drive down to the Cedar River back in to tell Martha her barn was on fire. Of course, by the time all that happened, the barn was gone. And I was a kid, about 6 or 7 years old, standing on the doorway when Martha came out the door. She swung that door open, knocked it clear off the door. So it upset you, the barn was on fire. And that was in the Ames of It Enterprise. This is a shot taken where Simpson Home is now. There's going to be a building there, just that'll be interesting. That on a photo.
That's my old go-kart track. Seriously.
You can tell some stories about that.
Let me throw one name out, Dean Morrison. Said.
That's a good story right there.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. On the ground at that time.
We didn't care.
Yeah, squatters in other words.
We were, yeah.
I lived in that house. That was a Dutton house. That's where the softball field is now. Way out there, the White House.
Sure, I see the farmhouse. It's still there, isn't it?
No, it's the softball field now.
Okay. Another historical, you probably recognize the building, dental shop now. The reason I took this is because the door to the right, it's an oversized door, was the door for the public to go up to, I call it Shipman Hall, but it was a different name several times. There's another name of it. It was
getting the first Rotary meeting place.
It was the town recreation building, entertainment center. Huge building, it's still there. Held a 12-foot ceiling. I remember talking to some Rotarians over there in the first meetings, had a center fireplace, wood burning. So of course your front got real hot and your back got real cold. That's the way they worked. The door covered over right now, but that was the way you got up to the store, to the entertainment. I love the mail shows and that type, and traveled through the town. Right now, that door going in is to, I think, the law shop, but the big door is covered over. Oh, talk about, can you back up one? On the left, see that door? See the sign? Colonial bread? They were on every door all over town, some events there.
That was Bargain Corner, right?
Yes, at the time, yeah. Jumbo's Tap in the day, it was just one building at that time. Article expanded out to two buildings. Jumbo's Tavern, yeah. We had just as many taverns as did gas stations. Two more real characters. On the left is Don Bemis, on the right is Elmer Meredith. Don Bemis worked at the drugstore for 100 years at least. Walked to work every day. Elmer Meredith, a local plumber. And two things you had to know about plumbing, stuff run downhill, payday was Saturday. That's what he ever told everybody. And Elmer, of course, in the Rotary Club, a good citizen. And he had a lot of black photos, or black, photos only. That's the guy I told you about, that his sister burned him up. And Elmer ended up in the nursing home and still wrote a column, I think, for the index holders in there. Good guy, football player for a small college in Iowa.
Do you know where they are in that picture?
Pardon?
You know, where are they in that picture?
Probably drugstore would be my guess. Waters Drugstore was kind of a hangout. You get a lot of information there, with no charge for it. Okay. Photo of Carrie in front of the veterinary office. Correct me from when that built as an ice cream shop, ice cream factory. Back in the 30s, 20s, and 30s. I remember, of course, been a veterinary store, but it still is. The apartment house, I'm sure, was added to it, second floor. About out? Okay. Two churches now, all wooden structures. That would be the
Christian church.
the east side. They were demolished. 76. Just a little house on the right. Tom Roberts and some other guys were kind of taking wood out of there if they could. And at that time, I got a whole pickup load of planks. And I used them for a flooring in my garage, so they're still there. And that's the Presbyterian, goods all demolished for progress of the First Church United. What was the year, anybody know?
77.
77. Some city engineers, those are Rotarians down at the fairgrounds. I go to the fair tent. Mary Dale Hintz on the left, and her grandson, everybody knows Katie Rag Sager, in the center, and Jim McCrabb on the right. A well-deserved break, I'm sure, from hard work. The Rotary Club would go down the night before, the week before, to get things organized. At one time, Rotary Club had 44 members in it. It had been too long ago. Well, that's the second building there was torn down. That's a cafe, of course. And before that, it was a gas station and a separate freestanding building, which they called it a grease rack. In those days, they didn't have a hoist, so they built a building, dug a pit underneath it to grease the cars, which required a lot of greasing in those days. They didn't have steel bearings. That was torn down, and the Crystal Cafe was built. Feinsteiner family. Right now is a car wash in there. West Liberty Index. I grew up with Bill Smith as the owner and operator, and he graduated from high school in the 30s, and that's the only job he ever had was running that newspaper owners. And his wife Myrtle sat at the front desk, would greet everybody come in. That was the kind of the hometown newspapers. And they made a nice living at it, but things change. The sad scene, one of the premier homes in West Liberty was where Dr. Royal lived, had to make way for the new church. And guys, that went down one day. When I was a kid and during World War II, they would have, he had a big yard, huge yard, and their small fairs come in and entertain and be funders for the war drive. Selling war bonds for $25, you buy one for $18, 10 years it was $25. And a lot of those were held at the benefit of because of their big yard. Of course, he passed on, then his son-in-law, Robert Treadle Robson, lived there. Well, another two more bums, got bums tonight. That's Tom Roberts on the left and Bob Cline in the middle, and Conrad Gregg on the tractor. The historical significance is the power, flag tower, was from the 1916 high school. I was down the Cedar River and I was down there visiting one afternoon and having a couple of Cokes. And I looked over and I saw that laying on the ground. I said, "What are you going to do that, Tom?" "I'm going to junk it out." I said, "No, you're not. What we're going to do is we're going to take that down to the schoolhouse and put it out front. How are we going to get it there? Your old pickup and mine." So we got two pickups. Put them together, stayed on the gravel road about the same speed because I didn't have the cat go control the speed. And the who's put it on the tractor. Conrad was digging the hole, and who the heck was his? Anyway, go by there and rolled clear up over the fence, slid up and caught up cussing because he knew that there was a well that put in a new electric pump right there underneath it, about 2 feet away. We didn't check it. That's kind of a check, but there was nothing here like this. That wouldn't have turned out good. One more shot of the schoolhouse. That came from,
Ron Johnson,
we called that the swamp.
because there was a swamp on it.
Yeah,
Dave Johnson.
the schoolhouse. There's a bell up in the belfry. We didn't come with the schoolhouse. They took it out. It cost $1,000 to buy it back. Oh, not a good thing. Fire at Western New York Company. I'm sure Scott can tell me the year and the month and the hour.
I think it was about 76 or 77.
78.
It was
78.
close, it was close. Yeah, I don't know how they kept that from not taking the whole downtown, because it had all those tires and it was such a hot fire. I think your brother fell down the grease pit.
He fell in something.
Yeah, it was a grease
Yeah,
rack.
still got the benefit from it. He did.
Is that right?
Well, one more shot on Highway 6. That's the overhead bridge. In those days, it was very common to build over the railroad instead of crossing. I thought it was safer. I'll bet there's more wrecks caused on the overhead. Yeah, the Atlas had the same thing. Then if you hit that wrong on ice, because that ice would go first, it wouldn't heat underneath it. That was narrow too, but they soon took it down. That's just Bonnie Brown's farm, just this side of there. If you can imagine, that's the main route from New York City to San Francisco, Highway 6, in the day. And they had to widen it, it used to be 8 feet wide. How we doing?
We're done.
We're done. Well, you're not, thank you very much for indulging.
Stories tell about Bob. I'm pretty sure he was responsible for it. When I joined Rotary years ago, first come to town, new member always ends up to be president at some point or another. And so my turn was to be president. I thought it was a great experience for a young fellow in the town to be president of this very prestigious club. It was a great, and one day I was in there opening the meeting, ringing the bell, everybody stands, and we go through our usual. One by one, they just started leaving the meeting room at Hawkeye Pizza. And I'm talking and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but they're all just kind of leaving, they're all going out into the restaurant, and nobody's, so Bob, I think, sticks his head, I'm sure it was Bob or Tom, sticks her head around, and something, I coined a phrase, the power of cheese, that. And you stuck your head around the corner and you said, "Behold," because that's what I would say, "Behold the power of cheese," and everybody would come back in. He goes, "Behold," and they'd all say, "The power of cheese," and they came back in. It was just one of those like silly, super stupid things that we did. I thought was just a stitch. But I remember he was a prankster behind that, so again, he's spotting my just for the practical jokes that these guys do, and I always thought that was good. So the history that we've been talking about is just fabulous. And I'm hoping one of these days I'll get a little bit of a nugget on the house that I'm at 411 3rd Street. We've already got a few pictures because these are good. So the history that we've been talking about is just fabulous. And I'm hoping one of these days I'll get a little bit of a nugget on the house that I'm at 411 3rd Street. We've already got a few pictures on that, and there's just a ton of pictures on houses and stuff like that. So if you've got some interesting angles, if you want us to do a program on just houses or just downtown businesses or something, types of things that we could easily put together. We've got a lot of historians in the room, and I think it would be a wonderful thing. So, William, is there anything you want to add to your earlier words? Are you pretty good for right now? Okay, you put some thought to that.